Week number 6 of the NFL season is officially here, so in today's video, I'm going to try and predict every single game of week number 6. So as I said, I'm going to be trying to predict every single game of week number 6. There are 4 teams on bye weeks, which are going to be the LA Rams, Miami Dolphins, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Minnesota Vikings. So for all 4 of those teams, rest up, feel better, and hope to see you guys next week. We are going to begin with our Thursday night matchup, and we will be ending the video off with our Monday night matchup. So with that being said, if you guys do go on to enjoy the video, make sure you guys smash the like and subscribe button, but let's get into it. So as I said in the introduction of the video, I'm going to begin with our Thursday night matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. This game should be a really interesting game between two teams that are kind of struggling right now. San Francisco is 2-3 on the season, but have definitely shown a lot of positive signs. Whereas Seattle started the season off really well with a 3-0 record, but in the past 2 weeks, they lost to the Detroit Lions and the New York Giants. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of some history here when making my prediction. Brock Purdy is 4-0 against the Seattle Seahawks and has played very well against them. None of the games have necessarily been blowouts. I could definitely see a world where Seattle could have won a couple of those games, but ultimately San Francisco did find a way to win those ones. And I kind of expect this game to be pretty consistent with what we've seen already between these two teams the past couple times they've met. I expect San Francisco to play well offensively given all the injuries that Seattle has defensively, and I expect Seattle to be able to do some positive things on their own end offensively. So I do expect this one to be relatively high scoring. I think it's going to be somewhere between the 20 to 29 scoring range. But again, I'm going to stick with what history has told me, and I'm going to predict the San Francisco 49ers to win this game with a final score of 27-21. Then we move on to our London game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Chicago Bears. It feels like Jacksonville has had so many games where they've played in London, and they've been moderately successful in those games. This is a Jaguars team that just got their first win of the season and have looked a little bit better the past 2 weeks since that Buffalo loss. So while I'm not going to sit up here and tell you guys that Jacksonville is a good team now, they're definitely starting to play some better football than what they showcased against the Bills. And that story could also be said for the Chicago Bears. Every single week, it feels like this team is getting better, and better. And in this most recent week, albeit against the Carolina Panthers, they put together their best performance both offensively and somewhat defensively. So I do expect this one to be another step forward for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears team. And because right now Jacksonville just has so many different issues both offensively and defensively, I feel like this one should be a relatively easy win for Caleb Williams, and it should be an area where he can showcase his abilities. So with that said, I have the Chicago Bears winning with a final score of 28-21. Then we have an NFC South showdown between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. It does appear like Spencer Rattler will be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, so that should be extremely exciting for all Saints fans out there. But I go into this game and I'm looking at it from a standpoint of which team is going to win this matchup, and Tampa Bay is experienced. They've played some really good football this year. They're coming off a bye week, so they have extra rest to get healthy and all that. Whereas this Saints team is coming off a couple straight losses. They are not playing great football right now, have a bunch of injuries, and of course now you're starting a rookie who was drafted in the later portion of last year's draft. So to me, that kind of speaks a tad bit of disaster for the Saints team. I do think this one could be relatively close through the first couple quarters, but eventually I do think Tampa Bay will be able to put them away. So with that said, I have Tampa Bay winning with a final score of 24-13. Next up, we have a very fun game that honestly could potentially give us our MVP frontrunner between the Washington Commanders and the Baltimore Ravens. I know Baltimore has 2 losses on their resume, but if they don't have a toe out of bounds against Kansas City, and if they just don't blow it against the Raiders, if they're 5-0 and look like the scariest team in the entire NFL. Whereas for Washington, this offense has been completely just straight up awesome. These past couple weeks, they've been going up against some legitimately good competition and have still looked great. And defensively, they still have their issues, but they've been playing some pretty good ball on the defensive side as well. I expect this one to be a really high scoring game, and this is going to be hopefully the first meeting of many between Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels. So I expect this game to be a heavy dose of rushing offenses, and I think this one is going to get pretty high scoring and pretty intense late into the game. But with that said, I am going to go with the team that I think is just simply better both offensively and defensively. I think this team has 2 MVP candidates in their backfield, and that's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. You have a Washington offense that's very youthful and young, and that defense isn't great, going up against a really good Ravens defense and an experienced quarterback in Lamar and Derrick Henry. So with that said, I have the Baltimore Ravens winning this game with a final score of 30-28. Next up, another game that I expect to be pretty high scoring here between the Green Bay Packers and the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona is coming off a very impressive victory from last week. Green Bay is also coming off a victory of their own, albeit not as impressive and pretty. For Green Bay, I do expect them to pick up where they left off last week. I expect them to continue to play better and kind of figure things out because the offense hasn't looked as good as it normally has been. These are two teams that are very capable of putting up some big numbers statistically on the offensive end because they have guys like Jordan Love and Kyler Murray, and I do expect that to follow again in this upcoming week. Kyler Murray and this offense has looked a little bit inconsistent, but when they get going, they are one of the best teams in the they're one of the best offenses in the entire NFL. Whereas for Green Bay, Jordan Love hasn't been healthy. It hasn't really looked like his true self quite yet, but it's starting to kind of point towards the direction of it being very good. So if we get a good version of Jordan Love, I fully expect them to win this game. I do think it will be close. I think this game is going to play out very similarly to how week 1 of the NFL season played for the Cardinals when they went up against the Bills. I expect Arizona to maybe start off with a lead and then eventually their offense kind of fizzles out, maybe has some turnovers, and Green Bay can swing back into the game and eventually take command of it. So with that being said, I'm going to pick Green Bay to win this one with a final score of 31-27. Next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts versus the Tennessee Titans. Now, I'm kind of going into this game a tad bit blind. I don't know if Anthony Richardson is going to be playing for the Colts, and I don't know if Will Levis will be playing for the Tennessee Titans. So because of that, and because I'm making this 3 days before they actually end up playing, I'm going to give you guys 2 scoring predictions, and that's going to be if Anthony Richardson and Will Levis play, and it's also going to be if the backups play, which I believe will be Joe Flacco and Mason Rudolph. So starting off, if Anthony and if Will Levis plays, this is obviously going to be a matchup between 2 turnover-prone quarterbacks that also have the ability to completely break this thing open with their pure talent and arm ability. It's kind of hard to figure out what this Colts team is going to be because we also don't know if Jonathan Taylor is going to be playing in this game either. I don't believe he's been practicing, so I think it's leaning towards a no. So because of that, I would expect a heavy dose of running the football with Anthony Richardson's legs, whereas for this Titans offense, I expect it to look basically as bad as it's looked the beginning couple weeks. With an injured quarterback and some struggles offensively, I don't think that they really would stand a chance, even if Anthony was to play. So because of that, if both quarterbacks are healthy, I have the Colts winning with a final score of 21-17. But if this does not happen, if the Colts don't have their starting quarterback, and if the Titans don't have their starting quarterback as well, then I expect a game where Tennessee really struggles offensively and gives a couple extra possessions to a Joe Flacco-led offense that has shown the ability to actually move the ball down the field with or without Jonathan Taylor. So because of that, and because Joe Flacco is extremely aggressive, which really does help this Colts offense, I'm going to predict it to be a pretty similar game here, but I'm going to have the Colts winning with a final score of 28-17. Then we have another AFC matchup here between the Houston Texans and the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots are starting Drake May over Jacoby Brissett this week, and I think he gives them the better chance to win because of his ability as a playmaker, but it's also his first NFL start going up against a damn good Houston Texans defense. So I feel like I don't have to say a whole bunch here. This Houston team has looked really good. If they get Joe Mixon to play this week, then that offense should really look even better. Defensively, this Texans team has looked very solid, and they're going up against a Patriots team that doesn't have a good offensive line, doesn't have a great run game, doesn't have a whole bunch of playmakers. And sure, Drake May can make a couple of really nice plays that get his offense going and maybe provide a spark. But when it comes to a full 4-quarter game, I think Houston wins this one pretty handily. So with that said, I have Houston winning with a final score of 24-10. Next up, we have a game that on paper should be a good game, at least when we were coming into the season, but now it's a bit more of a question mark as to how good this game will be, and that's between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cleveland Browns. By most accounts, it does appear like the Philadelphia Eagles are a tad bit more of a healthy team from what they were the last time we saw them. From what I've heard, guys like AJ Brown will be playing, so if that's the case, this Eagles team should look a lot better than what they did when they went up against a team like the Buccaneers, for example. And they have a pretty easy and favorable game. This Browns offense has been straight up just god-awful, and this Browns defense just simply cannot hold this team up long enough to win games. So for this Browns team, if they want any chance to win this game, 1, Deshaun Watson has to play better, which I don't think is going to happen, but 2, they're going to have to force a bunch of turnovers. So for the Philadelphia Eagles, I expect a healthy dose of Saquon Barkley, a healthy dose of AJ Brown, and a whole lot of RPO screens, all those sort of easy things, so that there isn't too much risk of turnovers. Even if there are a couple turnovers, I just don't think this offense for Cleveland can really capitalize on those turnovers. So for the Eagles, as long as they just don't play terribly, which I don't think they will, they're coming off a bye, then I expect them to win this one fairly handily as well. I think it could be relatively closer because, again, Eagles do struggle with turnovers and the Browns are a really good defense. So I think the Eagles will win, and I think they'll win pretty handily, especially in the fourth quarter. But I don't expect it to be a blowout if you want to go there. I have the final score being Philadelphia 20 to the Cleveland Browns 13. Then we move on to our 3 o'clock slate of games. We are going to begin with an AFC West matchup between the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers. Now, similar to that Colts and Titans game, I really don't know what to expect from this Chargers team because of all the injuries they're going through. Because Herbert did play when he was injured, I expect him to be able to play in this Broncos game. But I think that's a really tall task for Justin Herbert because offensively for that Chargers team, they just don't have playmakers like a team like Kansas City does. And with Denver's incredible defense that has been really, really good this year and has forced a bunch of issues on really good quarterbacks. Hell, they made Aaron Rodgers look really bad. I think that's going to really give issues to this Chargers team that doesn't have great wide receivers and is going to have to rely on their run game. But I think Denver can honestly stuff the run pretty well. So I don't expect this one to be a very high scoring game. And I think that definitely does favor this Broncos team. Say what you want about Denver, but they have been able to put up some numbers offensively. Bo Nix has looked more and more comfortable every single week. And even though this Chargers defense is really good, I don't know if it's good enough to really compare with a team like the Broncos. I kind of think these are two very similar teams, but I think Denver is just a tad bit better right now. So because of that, I'm going to pick Denver to beat the LA Chargers with a final score of 20-14. Of course, that all does depend on even if Herbert plays this week. So if Herbert doesn't play, I still think Denver wins, and I think the margin is maybe a little bit wider. Then we have an AFC matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Las Vegas Raiders. Initially, when picking this prediction, I actually picked the Raiders to win this game because Pittsburgh offensively just doesn't feel connected right now. But then I started going through all the potential ways that the Raiders could actually win this game, and really it just boils down to Aiden O'Connell being better than Gardner Minshew. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I don't know if Aiden O'Connell is a better player than Gardner Minshew. So because of that, that theory and that thought process just simply didn't work. This is going to be a game where TJ Watt's going to be able to tee off. This Raiders offense does not run the ball effectively. They don't have the playmakers outside of Brock Bowers to really make this secondary for Pittsburgh have to work. And because, yes, both these teams have great defensive lines, but I would trust Pittsburgh offensive line a lot more. I think this one should be pretty straightforward. I think Justin Fields can do some good things. He won't necessarily have to be elite to win this one, so I have Pittsburgh winning with a final score of 21-16. Next up, we have an NFC South showdown between the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. This game should be pretty interesting. I expect Andy Dalton to be the starting quarterback yet again for the Carolina Panthers. Whereas when you look at this Falcons team, they have been playing some really good ball, especially as of late. Offensively, it does look like this team is a tad bit more connected. Obviously, Kirk Cousins just threw for 500 yards last week. And while I'm not going to sit up here and predict Kirk Cousins to throw for 400, 500 yards yet again, I do expect him to play really well against a Panthers defense that just isn't very good. I expect the Panthers offense to be able to move the ball. I don't know if they'll be able to finish drives, and I'm not sure how consistent it will be, but I expect them to be able to put up some points. This is not a Bryce Young-led offense that can't move the ball at all and is just kind of one drive at a time. This is an offense that can put together some drives to put up points. But when you're going up against a Falcons offense that does appear like it's going in the right direction, you're just asking a whole lot from this offense, which I don't know if they're even capable of really matching what they need. So because of that, I have the Falcons winning with a final score of 30-20. And then to finish up the 3 o'clock games, we have a matchup between the Detroit Lions and the Dallas Cowboys. This is a game that has sort of been brewing over the offseason. Obviously, we all know what happened last time these two teams met, where the Detroit Lions kind of got screwed out of a victory. Now, when predicting this one, it is really difficult. I feel like a lot of it just comes down to whether or not you guys think the Dallas Cowboys can stuff the run this week. Because say what you want about this Cowboys defense, obviously they were terrible in the first maybe 3 weeks outside of the Cleveland game. But then in the last 2 weeks, albeit against the Steelers and against the Giants, the Dallas Cowboys run defense has been a whole lot better. So I kind of feel like if Dallas can stuff the run, and if Deron Bland does end up playing, then I think the Dallas Cowboys defensively can actually stop this Detroit Lions offense. I know that's going to be a bit of a tall ask here because the Lions are a really good running offense, but I think if Dallas can hold them to like 3 yards a run, then that really favors Dallas. Because I do think Dallas offensively will be able to put up numbers. It may not be every single drive going downfield putting up numbers, but they did really good against a Steelers defense, even though they couldn't capitalize on it because of turnovers. So I expect Dallas offensively to play well. It just comes down to, can they stuff the run, and can they maybe keep the time of possession really close? And if they can do that, then I think Dallas has a really good shot of winning. But if they can't stuff the run, then this Lions offense is just going to put a beat down on them. But I'm going to predict this Cowboys defense to be able to slow down the run. Now, I could be completely wrong on this one, and I think if I am wrong, then I think this is going to be a Lions blowout. Meaning that if the Dallas Cowboys can't stop Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery, this thing can get really ugly really quickly. But because I'm going to predict the Dallas Cowboys defense to be able to somewhat slow down this Lions run game, then I think that favors the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm going to predict them to win with a final score of 27-24. Moving on, we have our Sunday night matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals, who have been struggling, versus the New York Giants. The key issue for the Bengals has not been their offense. They've been putting up 30 bombs left and right and have been playing very well. The issue has been this defense has looked horrendously bad. And now they're going up against a Giants team that does have some good things going for it offensively, albeit, say what you want to say about this Giants team, but they've looked pretty good so far through the season. They haven't looked great. They definitely still have issues, but it hasn't looked as bad as maybe I once thought it was going to be. Daniel Jones has looked pretty competent this year. Malik Neighbors is a complete stud, and they actually have some resemblance of good offensive line play. With that said, though, I don't think it's so improved that they're going to be able to drop 40 points on the Cincinnati Bengals. This is also a Cincinnati team that is basically trying to crawl back into the playoff conversation. They're 1-4 and have got to get a victory versus a bad Giants team. So because of that, I expect this offense led by Joe Burrow to play very well. It just comes down to, can they force some stops, which I think they can do against a Giants team that doesn't have a great offense. So because of that, I have the New York Giants losing to the Cincinnati Bengals with a final score of 33-21. And then the last game of the week on Monday Night Football between the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. Let's start off with the Jets side of things because this is really where things get very interesting. The Jets just fired Robert Saleh. And I'll be honest with you, I don't necessarily know if I love the firing of him, especially when we're only in week 6. Yes, the offense hasn't looked good, but Robert Saleh's defense has looked good. So I'm thinking there's probably a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we just don't know about. Maybe it's disagreements between the owner and Saleh. Maybe it's something that Saleh was planning that the owners didn't like. I don't know. It really does feel like this Jets team is just kind of giving everything to Aaron Rodgers and saying, here you go, you work with what we're giving you and figure it out. But I'll be honest with you guys, I think that is a terrible idea. No matter how good the quarterback is or how legendary they are, you don't give them the power to run your organization. Yes, I know that Tampa Bay did a lot of things for Tom Brady, like giving him Gronk and asking for Edelman and all these things, but those were guys who were still really good players. Whereas for this Jets team doing whatever they want with Aaron Rodgers, you're getting guys like Alan Lazard, and you're trying to go for guys like David Bakhtiari, and you bring in Nathaniel Hackett, who just aren't very good. And even though I will say I don't think this offense, especially the coaching-wise, has been particularly bad, I also don't think it's been really good. I would say the play calling has been pretty solid. I just think that it's just not extremely creative, primarily in the run game, which I think this team really has to establish with guys like Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. And then obviously I'm talking a lot about the Jets here, but there is a second party, the Buffalo Bills. Listen, I made a full-fledged video on this Bills team, so if you guys want to check it out, I'll have it pinned up right now. But my whole thought process with the Buffalo Bills is they're a very good team. They're just a little bit flawed offensively. But in this matchup, you got the Jets with a new head coach, a lot of things changing over there. Offense hasn't looked good. Bills defense is very good, and their offense has some issues, but in my opinion, can still put up numbers. So I expect this to be a pissed off Bills team going up against a Jets team that is probably very confused about what they're going to be looking like moving forward. So because of that, I think the Bills honestly blow out the Jets here. I have the final score being 34 Buffalo to the 20 that the New York Jets will put up. But that is going to conclude all my picks. These are a bit of a summary of all the picks I have here. As you can see, my 43-35 record is not very good. But like I said, hopefully I could turn it around. And if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button, and I love you guys. Peace.